I'm your host, Tony Caligiuri, along with Francis Beck and Tom Prince from Western New York Athletics. Frank is out on assignment. He's covering scrimmages. We'll have a rundown of scrimmages in just a little bit. Dick Gallagher from Channel 2 is here, and Roger Weiss, our resident troublemaker. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Derek.
Raj.
Morning, y'all.
That's better. All right. Let's see. It's scrimmage weekend. Next week, we start the regular season, so it's exciting time, but at the same time, I'm sad, because that means summer's over. I don't want summer to over. I love summer so much.
It's too hot.
No, it's not. It's beautiful. I love it. But, you know, it must come to an end. And, of course, next Saturday is Wingfest. Roger and I will be judging there. So if you have any plans on attending Wingfest, I think, Raj, we start tasting at about 12:30, I believe. Juicers are sent us a note today. So
Wait. You guys are official judges of a wing contest?
yes,
Wow. Wait. This is a big deal here.
it is a big deal. We've been doing this for several years now. My son Nick joins me. We'll be sitting next to Lauren Fix, the card coach. Raj, have you decided if you're going to walk around or are you going to hang out under the canopy with us at the picnic table?
I hope to walk around, bump into more people that way.
Yeah, then
Are
you
you
can't be as,
folks-
but you can't be as honest. Like you know, if I'm standing in front of the wing stand,
I don't want to hear
and I
that,
don't want to tell them,
Anthony.
oh, by the way, your wing's terrible. I'm not gonna. I need to throw it
No,
away.
you don't say anything to them.
No?
They're too busy serving the people in line.
Okay.
And, you know, like I say, unless, you know, after about the fourth or fifth wing, you know, unless you have some like a lime sherbet or something that you can cleanse the palate with, to me, it's difficult to judge. And I think it would just be amplified with them just bringing you wing after wing after wing and all that.
I love it though. I sit there and enjoy
Question
it.
for the panel today. I'm sure Mr. Gallagher knows, I don't know about Tom or Francis. Are you familiar with the movie It's a Wonderful Life with James Stewart?
Oh, yes.
Of course. Not really.
I-
I'm not very
The
educated
only
in
reason,
that area.
Anthony, the only reason I bring it up is just remember, if you hear a bell ring, another angel gets its wings.
I thought you were saying it's time to eat.
That is very corny,
Yes, it
and
is.
also, Francis,
Dick, throw something at him.
most of us were not born when that movie was made.
Yeah. I love that movie.
I beg to differ. Two of us were born, Richard, and you're one of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. All right, so we've got Wingfest going on next week. I'm a nervous wreck today, so if it sounds like I'm completely disorganized, and that's because tomorrow's our season opener for Little League football, and Niagara Falls Junior Football Club Cobras. We are headed to Niagara Wheatfield High School tomorrow for a 1 o'clock kickoff against Wheatfield. So excited about that. We didn't have a preseason game this year, so I'm not I'm not sure how my team's going to perform. I was telling Dick before the show, it's kind of like you're tuning a race car, and you have to tune it by ear because you don't have a timing light. Can't use the timing light until after the game to know what I have. I think it's going to run right. I think it's going to go fast, but I'm not really sure. So that's why we're going to have to get out there tomorrow.
Well, I'm sure they have outstanding coaching, so you can make the difference.
So we're really in trouble now.
I got a question,
Yes, big number 99, Nick Caligiuri will be playing line.
when
Not
you,
starting.
on the offense at that level, does the QB have hands under center, or does he have a direct snap?
Either or, depends on your offense.
Well, the only reason I ask is you, equated it to, tuning up an engine and all that, and I just wonder where exactly top dead
Whoa.
center would be.
Oh, man.
What do you
He's
think,
brought-
Tom? Don't you
He
think
brought
that's
his
some
D
silly-
game today.
You really are bringing it out today, aren't you?
Let's talk.
You guys
football.
are egging me on. He brought up about tuning up engines, he brought up about the wing
Well, that's a
fence.
Burgard thing. That's my mechanic background.
Let's talk football.
Derek's on
Yes.
the phone, so he can't help me out right now, but I'm sure Derek would back me up 100%.
All right, news and notes. I saw on Twitter this morning that Nick Todaro is going to stay with Hutch Tech. He's going to be an assistant coach for Tony Treluzio So the engineers are going to be able to keep their assistant coach. So good for the engineers, good for Nick Todaro. Hope
Very
everything-
positive for Hutch Tech.
Yeah, hope everything works out there. Scrimmages going on today, Francis, there's a whole bunch of them. In fact, we may hear from Frank a little bit later on, when he calls in, gives an update as to what he sees down in Southwestern, I believe. He's down in that part of the area. What do you have there, buddy?
Alright, so there's several scrimmages going on today. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but some of the highlights, the mega scrimmage this year moves to Grand Island High School, made up of Willys, Niagara, Wheatfield, St. Francis, Lockport, Sweet Home, and of course the Vikings. That
That is a
scrimmage,
big scrimmage.
yeah, it's traditionally usually in Lockport, but of course, they're getting a new field this year, so they don't necessarily have the space to host it, so Grand Island's gonna take care of that. Down in Orchard Park, you have Iroquois, Frontier, and the Quakers sitting together. Up in Niagara Falls, now this is an interesting,
St. Joe's, Niagara Falls.
Chautauqua Lake, Maple Grove, and University Prep.
Yes, I knew it was a Section 5 team as well.
So interesting there. Clarence get a lot of.
Chautauqua Lake and Maple Grove?
Yeah, now we did hear some conflicting reports that maybe there was another scrimmage going on, but we couldn't confirm that it was somewhere else. This was from the official stuff we got from the schedule from Arbiter.
That's the first I didn't, on the previous write-ups, I didn't catch that. That was, I just hope somebody, that's putting on the web aren't confusing when they used to be combined teams. It's, of course, it's a few years back, but.
At Clarence, there's a nice scrimmage out there. The Red Devils, West Seneca West, Lancaster, and Star Point.
That's the one I'm headed to, Anthony, afterwards.
Okay, I have a friend of mine that sent me a text yesterday, Roger, and at 10 o'clock at Niagara Falls High School, Chautauqua Lake, Maple Grove, University Prep, St. Joe's, Niagara Falls.
No, the other reason I question it too is 5 teams. Usually it's either 4 or 6, because they always have 2 teams going head to head.
Yeah, but you
And
have a
that-
team
Maybe
ticket, right?
part of that was
I
those 2 teams
understand
aren't
that,
gonna
but
go
that's not
head
how
to
they
head.
usually do it.
That also could be those 2 teams aren't gonna go head to head too.
I don't doubt that for the New York Second.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
And then the other big one, a lot of teams is gonna be at O'Hara. It's gonna be at 1 o'clock for the late crowd. North Tonawanda, Newport, Springville, and the Hawks.
Did you mention the 2 o'clock scrimmage at Stransky?
Yeah, and then the 2 o'clock is Canisius, Hutch Tech, and South Park. It'll be at Stransky and West Seneca.
Okay, so now if you wanna go catch it, we have them all, or?
Yeah, that's most of them. You
The
can find the
highlights.
rest of them. There's a lot of, there's about, 10, 15, and
Right.
a bunch of them are just 2
Some of
teams.
them are just 2 schools going
Yeah,
head to head.
yeah,
Okay.
so.
Gotcha. Well, a lot of people get excited for the scrimmages, and they're fun to watch. I remember when NT used to host one every year, and it was, I believe, like 4 schools. Riverside would play in it, and it was enjoyable. You get to see different, styles of football, and get to see some pads popping. That's what you want to see. All right, and then next week, as I mentioned, Friday night we kick off games, and Saturday, so we're ready for it. All right, do you have anything else for news and notes, guys?
No, I just had a question, any scuttlebutt on who is gonna be scrimmaging this week with one team and end up at another school next Saturday?
Well, you say
Well, I
that.
think you just led into news and notes though.
Okay,
The big story this week, Maurice Robinson, senior quarterback at Sweet Home, transferred over to West Seneca West.
There we go, people thinking it's free agency again.
Yeah, it was kind of came as a shock to really both coaches, how it all played out. We're not going to get into the whole story, but,
I'm sorry, I do not, a week before the season starts and you're transferring. We saw, 2 years ago, was that Sanders?
yeah,
well,
Sanders
so
did
that's
that.
why I brought up that nasty comment I made leading into that. 2 years ago, Sanders actually participated in the scrimmage for South Park on scrimmage Saturday, and then in the middle of the following week enrolled into timing.
It's not right.
Yeah.
It's not only not right, it is dead wrong.
I still think that you should, once that first day of practice comes, you're
locked in.
You're locked in.
Yeah.
Unless you come in from out of town or something, you're locked into that team. I will say what makes this kind of interesting is that Sweet Home plays West Seneca West week 1 next week. However, Robinson only had 3 practices as of Monday night, so he's not eligible for today's scrimmage or that first game. He should be eligible for their week 2 game against Kenmore West. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But again, I want to say it was a shock to both coaches.
Yeah. Okay.
Couple of things on that. Number one, isn't he already a minimum, exclusive of captain's practices and all that? He's already a week behind as far as practices with his own team. Number two, he has to come in and dislodge the person who has been.
That's what
The
somebody made
number
that
one
comment on
quarterback.
Facebook, says, how do you think that quarterback feels now he's gonna be, replaced? So that's what, 2 years in a row, at West Seneca, somebody's
think-
gonna have to step aside?
I think, I haven't talked to Mike, but I think that Liam did the same thing last year until Matt came over, and then he just played the one way or both ways on the line. I think this year, he'll be the quarterback, he's been doing the 7-on-7, he has an edge, he's an outstanding player, makes all Western New York, is a sophomore, and I think that Robinson going over will help their defensive backfield, but I don't think he'll be playing quarterback.
Okay.
And I was gonna add into that too, Roger, I completely agree, this is a kid that's been doing the 7-on-7s in the winter program, in the spring program, I mean, it's been
Knows the
ongoing
system.
now for a year.
Which
They've
is
been
why I'm not
practicing.
crazy about Francis' comment using the, August 13th or whatever the start of practice dates is. It goes farther back than that, in my opinion.
It does, but it's where would you go back to then? The end of the school year? I mean, you're really like,
I don't know that there is an answer right now. I really don't. I think
In
it's
the old
something that-
days, regardless of the reason that you were transferring, whether you were transferring from West Seneca East to West Seneca West, or whether you were transferring from Western Texas to West Seneca East, you still had to sit out a semester.
All right, guys, anything else for news for notes before we get into, all right, we've pretty much covered everything. Now we need to get into the A's and double A's today, Dick. A lot to go through. We have, 3 divisions in A's this year?
Right, 3 leagues, 18 teams, and Class A1 has outstanding talent and outstanding teams. And the one that stands out is West Seneca West, who won the state championship last year. They got 13 starters returning. Mentioned Liam Shore, who's just an outstanding athlete. Mike Linsky, all Western New York last year as a sophomore linebacker. Brian Ball, Kyle Hadich, Josh Clifton, who is an outstanding kicker, and he was Mr. Automatic last year. John Spire. So when you take a look at the starters returning, the quality, the number of games they played last year, the Indians have to be the favorite in this division.
Well, if you look at it this way too, okay, they had a long run, which means the backup guys got plenty of reps during the postseason run while they practiced. That is so big in leading into this year. So when you mentioned 13 returners and as far as starters go, that's big.
When Lackawanna had that run 3 or 4 years in a row going for state championships, they were playing 12, 13 games a year. And those kids had just tremendous repetitions, experience, and that was huge.
And that's, you see it in college football. When you talk about teams that are in bowl games every year, that's why you want to get in bowl games. You want to get your backups to get the reps, more reps. Well, if your season ends, whatever, in early November, you're done. You're not practicing anymore. If you're in a bowl game that's playing in January, look at all the extra practice time you're getting.
Other teams in that league, Jamestown, who's gone from AA to an A.
That's the big adjustment, I think, this year, is looking at the AA schools that have now come down.
And Sevon Bensico is only a sophomore. He started as a freshman, outstanding on both sides of the ball, is Division I candidate. Francisco Rodriguez is a strong two-way player. Drew Boggs is a decent quarterback. Paige Jones, Grant Moore. So they returned 10 starters. They'll be very competitive. Niagara Wheatfield, I think, could be a sleeper this year. They got 14 starters returning. Jordan Parks is a really under-the-radar screen, excellent quarterback, defensive back, and other key players, Noah Nixon, Nick Stott, Tommy Bellatier, and Jake DeWolf.
I just want to come in with, if you haven't heard the story, Jordan Parks this football season was very much in doubt in the winter. He was found, on his kitchen floor, fainted. It turns out he had an irregular heartbeat, and
That's right.
he was very touch and go for a while, and he was only cleared to, participate in anything in early May. So this kid's got an amazing chip on his shoulder. I don't know if there's another player more grateful to be out on the field this year in the area.
Good call there, Francis.
And Kenmore West returned 13 starters. Joe Stewart's an outstanding two-way player. Weston Buchanan, other key players, Noah DiBello, Zach Boyes, AJ Hill. Chuck Tilley returns to coach in Western New York. He's a longtime coach at Eden and Tonawanda. Frontiers only won a couple of games the last 2 years.
Mhm.
They've got 12 starters returning. Key players, Tyler Bailey, Max Fleming, Jacob Stimbolis. Hamburg only won one game last year. They could struggle again this year. Key players for the Bulldogs, Spencer Dix, Nick Hafner, and Logan Garza. And when you take a look at this league, I don't think anyone matches up with West Seneca West.
So they're almost in like a league on their own, but
I
still
disagree
gotta
with,
play the game.
I disagree with that slightly. I think, in fact, team I really like a lot from last year, they only lost besides Terzillo, or it's not Trelizio, but it sounds like that. The Trench Trophy guy from Jamestown, he graduated, he played in the, in the Ken Lyons All-Star game and all that. Frank and I went down, we saw Jamestown and Will North a year ago. And it's not gonna be a walkthrough for West Seneca, in my opinion. I'm looking forward to the Jamestown, West Seneca, West game.
Could be a start of a new rivalry.
There's no doubt Jamestown's gonna be in the mix for this. I'll tell you, you could call this AA subset.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
Well,
Every-
every one of them's
Every
doing
one of
double
them,
A.
but Hamburg's the only one who hasn't played AA in years as far as football goes,
Right.
but they've played it in other sports. But you're saying in the last 3 years, the top 5 teams, West Seneca, Jamestown, Niagara Wheatfield, Ken West, and Frontier, have all played AA
Well,
within the last
basically,
3
the ones
years.
that dropped down and especially because A opted to, rather than do it geographically, to do it by school size, of course you're gonna have that. It is, almost AA1 or AA2 as opposed to A school, so, no, they're at a distinct advantage, but.
And Frontier's been saying that, look, it's difficult for us in double A. Maybe now being in A is gonna help them a little bit, I don't know.
Not this year.
Not this year?
Not with the teams.
Hey, I'm sorry, I'm trying to put a positive spin on it.
Frontier has
for
got a
them.
good
I'm sorry.
team this year.
Oh, I
Be
understand
prepared for
that.
them to be very competitive in this division still. I'll also say is between Jamestown and West Seneca, your Van Sickle that you just talked about is legit, this kid. And I'm gonna tell you is, it could be a matchup of the stars when you got Johnson over at West Seneca and you got him over at Jamestown, is really who's gonna be the one that steps up. And with him playing, he's playing linebacker, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's gonna play linebacker for Jamestown, and then he's gonna go to running back for Jamestown. And then you got Johnson who'll be at the wide receiver and is also playing 2 ways on defense. Could be who makes the bigger impact.
I
And
think,
you're probably talking 2 of the Conley Cup finalists.
I think two of the difference to me is West Seneca West defense, particularly with Schuler and Glinsky and Ball and Attic.
Yep.
They had so many reps, they really look good, and Tony was right. Some of those kids that were able to get in the games that they dominated, they've got that edge too. So one of the things in the last couple of years, Jamestown's defense was nothing like their defense for a century.
All right, guys, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue to look at the A's, and then, like I said, we'll get into double A's in a little bit. Keep it locked here, right here on WGR Sports Radio 550.
Think you have game? 550 Game Time is available at Wegmans, Tops,
Ow.
select 7-Eleven.
Welcome back to Inside High School Sports. Tony Kelligeri along with Francis Beck, Tom Prince, Dick Gallagher, and Roger Weiss. We're previewing the A's. We just did A1. We're going to move on to A2. But before we do that, we're going to say good morning to Frank Wolf, who is, I believe, at Southwestern watching the scrimmage. Morning, Frank. Yeah, there you go. What have you got for us, buddy, before we get back to our preview? Ooh. I'll give him our best when you talk to him. All right, you got it. Thanks, Frank. Have a great day. Frank Wolf chiming in from, I like he has to put the cheese sausage pepperoni in there for you, Raj. Does that make you
Oh,
hungry?
for me, sit down. He did it for you and you know
I
it.
may have to order one later on.
You might be, someone's gonna have to twist your arm, right?
Yeah. All right, let's get over to A2, Mr. Gallagher.
Okay, Sweet Home returned 16 starters. First year coach Jeremy Zimmer, but he's been with the program for several years. Outstanding defensive lineman Rob Giancola is a 99 GPA.
All right.
Most of the Ivy League schools are pursuing him.
Love it.
And he's amazing. Other key players, Keith Murphy, Adam LeBoy, Jamal Lucas, and last year they were 5-1. This year, who knows, but it's, the league will be competitive. Grand Island returns 12 starters from their 6-2 squad. Cam Sionka threw for almost 1,400 yards and 16 touchdowns. Other key players for the Vikings, Easton Spear, Anthony Seifert, and Jeremiah Wilkes, who's an outstanding defensive lineman, and he could be considered for the Trench Trophy too. Another team, Waysville East, who surprised everyone last year making the playoffs, Mike Torillo in his first year, outstanding coach.
Sure.
Returns 12 starters, key players for the Flames, Colson Skorka, Clayton Osborne, AJ Chima, and John Moran. McKinley has a new coach, Micah Harris, who's the interim coach right now, returns 9 starters. Tavon Martin, who actually played for McKinley, played for Sweet Home last year, now is back to McKinley, outstanding wide receiver. Another key player, Kajan Carthon. North Tonawanda returns Eric Jancy, who's won 97 games, also won a state championship and several league championships at North Tonawanda. He returns to the Lumberjacks, has 11 starters. They were 3-5 last year. Jancy and his crew will improve them.
Absolutely. He's a magician with line play. He'll have that line blocking, and they'll have a running game.
They'll be physical too.
Yes.
And 3 players that stand out, Matt Monge, James Holler, and Jake Myers. And for Kenmore East, who struggled the last few years, you gotta give credit, to the team. They hang in there. They won 2 games last year. But Nathan Murdy is a good quarterback, Donzo Young, and Nick Coburn.
Well, for them, the big question every year is numbers. You know, they're much like Tonawanda, you know, trying to keep above that 20 mark. Are they okay with numbers this year?
From what I understand, yeah, their JVs the last couple of years has had decent numbers. And Pat Beltry has done a good job. They're just in a very, very competitive league.
Sure.
And when you're down for 2 or 3 years, it takes you a while to get back up.
And I know the big question is will they be able to compete with Kenmore West when East-West game comes?
They did compete. They were a touchdown away from beating West last year. They
Okay.
were right on the doorstep. I also would like to say that JV team last year was a 2-point conversion away from being perfect. So they bring up a lot of kids from that team. I don't think they're going to be quite at that level, but they could easily run 500. They're going
Sure.
to be in that
They
area.
can surprise somebody too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And move to A3, and this is a league that every game they're gonna have, the teams are gonna have to play because it's outstanding. South Park last year, 1 point away from, I think, losing to West Seneca West. They were 9-1, returned 14 starters. They're probably gonna be one of the more physical teams this year, as always under Tim Delaney. Clarence Thompson, only a junior, outstanding two-way player. Elijah Lewis, tremendous sack man at defensive end. Yvonne Humphrey, outstanding athlete at maybe a quarterback, and Greg Braswell. Star Point, their JVs have been 35-5 the last 4 years. They've been outstanding under Al Cavagnaro. Last year, they were 6-3. Aaron Chase returns at quarterback. He's got a 97 GPA, some colleges are looking at him. Max Bowden, a 6'5".
They have some size.
Yeah.
108,
They
190.
have size.
Wide receiver, Boston College is interested in him. Justin Mott, outstanding linebacker, and Kevin Johnson.
Don't forget assistant coach Nate Butel does a great job. I gotta throw that in there.
Thank
Raj?
you.
Okay.
He's the man.
Mm-hmm.
He's
My
outstanding.
main man, Nate.
Williamsville South, 6-3 last year. They returned Jamal Jones, all Western New York, rushed for over 1,000 yards, had over 60 or 70 tackles at defensive line. He is a candidate for, all Western New York.
Wait a minute, Luke Falzone's coaching? Luke Falzone's
Yeah.
assistant coach this year?
Yeah, one of the coaches. They have about eight or nine coaches, I think. They all play for Craig Krasansky, come back over the years.
Well,
and,
Luke's father coached me, so I'm very familiar with the family.
That shows either how young you are or how
I'm
old
very
you are.
young, very young. It was just a couple of years ago.
And line, Will Lacey and A.J. Urbaniak. Joe Battaglia is an excellent athlete. He's playing quarterback. West Seneca East.
Wait, I gotta go right back to his, because I'm looking at this, I'm going through your notes here. Mike Masaki, I wanna talk about him, because this is interesting that there's a Shoshone connection with Williamsville South. Mike Masaki, who played at Shoshone, and as I mentioned, Luke Falzone's dad, who coached at Shoshone. Mike's father was, I think, a year behind me. Absolute tremendous football player. He was a star at Bennett, and I believe to this day holds UB's longest touchdown run from scrimmage at 99 yards.
Wow.
So if Mike plays anything like his father, look out for the Billies. I'm just telling you that.
Billy's
Go ahead.
Billy's gonna be very strong offensively. And when you take a look at that league, every game's gonna count.
What's Luke Falzone's father's name?
Oh, now you put me on Larry. I just had
So
my
he
brain
would
melted
have
for
an
a
older
minute.
sister, I think Lauren, who
Yeah,
used to play
yeah.
softball.
Yeah,
know it's-
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I remember that
That's the
connection.
family.
Remember that connection vividly.
And West Seneca East has 4 outstanding players. Sean Dolak, the Dolaks have
Yes.
4 outstanding
Love that family.
genes inbred because they're all outstanding athletes. But he's strong two-way. Nick Haman's an outstanding lineman. Dylan McNulty and Jesse Piper are also will be key players for Jim Marino's squad. Amherst returns 12 starters. I thought they were gonna do a lot better last year. They only won 2 games. We'll see what they do this year. But they have Mark Kenzie. They used to be head coach, be the coach at Clarence for all those years, and he's helping out a couple of days there, but he's also helping his 2 sons who are coaching,
The Amherst football
no,
team?
modified.
Yeah, okay.
Modified. Key players for the Tigers varsity, Jay Kai Womack, Deshaun Bearfield, Joe Byrne, Sean Murphy. And last but not least, Maritime Health Sciences Charter School, first charter school to go on, and they're totally independent from the city. Charlie Comerford is the coach and athletic director. They have a tough road. They play Canisius in the first game. They play South Park in the second. Lamoris Jones, Adam Lanier and they have a freshman quarterback, are excellent athletes, but I think they're gonna struggle this year, particularly against the competition.
One more time, I wanna bring it up, Anthony. Frank brought up a point, when we were talking about, I believe, the A2s, how a couple teams have a excellent chance of finishing 500 in league play this year, so 3-3. And unfortunately, because of the way the playoffs are set up, one of those teams, third place team, might push out one of the teams out of A1 from making the playoffs. Because once again, a fourth place team cannot qualify for the playoffs, even regardless of their
Right.
record versus the records of crossing over into the divisions.
Understood.
Before we move on to the double A's, can we just talk about some of those quarterbacks in that division? You have South Park's Davion Humphrey. He threw for nearly 1,800 yards last year. I think that's the best in the section. And you have Aaron Chase. The kid already holds 5 school records, passing records. How many kids enter their senior year with that?
Well, you said, was it last week or the week before, you said this is gonna be the year of the quarterback and the big offensive lineman, so, not surprised.
There's 13 outstanding quarterbacks with another 4 or 5 that'll be, have their teams in competition. I've never seen that number beginning the season, so.
Yeah,
hopefully-
we've seen like, maybe 6, 7,
Right.
not 14, this
Hopefully
is,
they stay healthy,
right.
but it'll be fun to watch.
Okay,
Well, as an example,
What?
how many quarterbacks usually end up in the finalists for the Conley Cup? If you get 3, that's a lot.
Right.
They're normally running backs.
You wanna start with?
yeah,
double
let's
A?
start for double A before we go to the break.
Okay, excuse me, this league had 11 teams last year, now they have 8. The 4 best teams are going to be in the playoffs, semifinals in week 9. When you take a look at North, Winslow North, Lancaster, Clarence, Orchard Park, they're 4 solid programs.
Sure.
Hutch Tech, it'll be interesting to see what Tony does with them.
But they've been very good, and, competitive,
If
they're
Dick
in the
Dick
playoffs.
Gennaro is still coaching the defense, you're gonna be hard pressed to score against them.
Right, and Bennett, got some quality players, Niagara Falls, I think is gonna be young, Lockport's gonna struggle. But when you look at Winslow North, they were 9-1 last year, until they got dominated by Lancaster, in the championship game. They returned 15 starters,
That's huge.
and Joe Nussall is an outstanding quarterback, Dylan Kelly, outstanding two-way player, Scott Beck, Scott Hopkins, and they lost 2 players. Greg Poland, 6'6", junior, I think he's about 190 pounds. Played tight end, defensive end. He transferred to St. Joe's. And then I'm blocking on the name, but there was a outstanding two-way lineman that went down to Edinburgh for one of the camps, wound up with an ACL, and he's out.
Oh.
But they'll be very, very competitive, and they have Dan Kelly being one of the coaches there as a volunteer. He's outstanding.
Is that Jim's brother?
That's Jim's brother, and he is just connects the dots for the Spartans.
Right.
I like them a lot. They came and Frank and I went to Jamestown last year with Will North at Jamestown, and I think they're the real deal.
And Red Devils were 5-4 last year. Clarence, they returned 14 starters.
They have nice new helmets this year, they look sharp, by
They,
the way.
They always do.
Last year, they had a new complex, and it's outstanding. But they have some outstanding talent. John Stevens, outstanding two-way player. He's got a 97 GPA. Jack Putney's gonna be one of the most versatile athletes in Western New York. Plays 3
Isn't he
sports.
one of the strongest in the area?
Yep, and also, plays quarterback. Zach Norton's only a sophomore, brought him up in JVs, he's a candidate for 1,000 yards rushing. And here's a name for all Irish football players to be proud of, Slade Stone Murphy. And he has an edge, and he'll be fun to watch, so they'll be very, very competitive, excuse me. And then you look at Hutch Tech, they have outstanding linemen, and Max Anderson, 6'5", 350,
Whoa!
With a
Oh
90
my
with a
God!
98 GPA, so he'll be fun to watch. Other key players for the Engineers, Mikael Woodruff, David Bradshaw, Anthony Whitfield, and then with Lancaster, last 2 years, 22-2, their JV was 16-2, but when you take a look at the talent that was lost, they only returned 7 starters.
But here's the one thing that I gotta say. With Lancaster, I know the work that they put into the off season. I know the amount of kids that are hitting the weight room with them. I know they have a top shelf coaching staff. Don't count them out.
Oh, no, I don't. Eric Rupp and the coach staff do an outstanding job.
Of course, we all know it's all Brusso.
You know, I'll tell you from a standpoint of watching coaches in-game, watching these guys for the last couple of years, probably the best in-game coaches I see of making adjustments during the game and to be able to bring it right out onto the field. Don't doubt this coaching staff one bit. I agree, Rupp will actually lead the way.
Yep.
And the key players, some of the key players, Brian Martin, David Gaka, Connor Mahoney, and Nick Mira. And then for the Quakers, they returned 10. They had a rare losing season last year, 4-5. But they have some outstanding talent returning. Michael, Pataki, Jack Sharp, who's only junior. He got better at every game last year at quarterback. Alex Westcott, outstanding lineman. They have some darn good receivers, Archie Bartolotti, Jordan Prince, Brad Fowler, and they host Lancaster in week 8.
All right, guys, let's take a break. When we come back, finish up with the double A's. Talk about some of the games coming up during the season that might wet your whistle to get out there and go catch one. Don't forget, Sports Talk Saturday follows us at 11 o'clock. Plenty of Bills discussion, I'm sure. We'll be back after this. This is gonna be a great day. One more segment, and then I get to start my vacation, head out to Sunset Bay and relax. And then, of course, my big game tomorrow.
Enjoy.
I'm gonna try to. I'm not gonna be able to relax much today. Like I said, I'm still nervous about tomorrow.
And good luck.
Thank you.
And-
All right, let's finish up where we
Yeah,
left off.
I've got two other teams in Class AA. Bennett, who's gonna be playing St. Joe's next Friday, has some good players in Sam John Clemens who could rush for 1,000 yards. Justin Campbell, Jordan Bryson, and Aaron Smith.
Wait, Justin Campbell. Do you guys remember a guy named, he's the nephew of the great Malik Campbell? Do you remember that guy?
Never heard the name before, yes.
Yes.
Justin Campbell is his nephew. And
Roger's rolling his eyes.
And,
You remember that far back, Francis?
No, I did the research. No.
and
We'll have to consult with the old man, Markel.
Way back then.
And the last school, Lockport, that's won one game in the last 2 years, have a new coach in Trade Smith.
New coach, new facility.
Yep.
Malik Brooks is an outstanding track star. He's out football this year. I don't know when the coaching change, what his status is, but if he plays, he's gonna give them a dimension that they haven't had in years. And then other key players, are Cullen Snyder, Santino Drake, and Josh Cooper. This league to me will be very competitive. Every game is gonna be a tough one, but you could wind up in the semis, particularly when you have Lancaster and Orchard Park playing in week 8. You could go in the semis, with some of those teams playing back to back, depending on how
Right.
the seeding goes. That's it for Class AA, and I just wanna make a meeting humble pie today. Last week I said, you wanna know a trivia question? And you all said yes, and I said that.
Who had the first field with the
First was
lights?
the Southwestern in the 50s.
Right.
I have been humbled by many people. Lancaster had lights in 1935 when they were the
That's
Maroons,
amazing.
not the Redskins elections. But Tonawanda, Dunkirk, and Jamestown also had lights prior to that. So I was way off base and
Yeah, by 20-something years.
Yeah, but were those electric lights or candle lights?
Yeah, candle lights. They have lanterns hanging on the.
And just one last thought, is we have over 160 West New York alumni that have played professional football, most in the NFL. This year, which is subject to change, we have Robbie Gronkowski, New England from Williamsville North, J.C. Treader from Akron playing the Cleveland Browns, Brett Kern, Grand Island, playing in Carolina, Corey Graham, Philadelphia, played at Turner Carroll, Ryan Hunter from Canisius at KC, Steve Means, Grover Cleveland at Philadelphia, and I don't know if Ryan is gonna still be on the final cut, but, Chad Kelly at from St. Joe's at Denver.
Looks like he may be the number 2 quarterback
Right,
there.
and Damone Harris from Timon at Tampa Bay, and then 3 CFL players, Luke Tasker from St. Francis at Hamilton, Naaman Roosevelt from St. Joe's at Saskatchewan, and Mercer Timmons from Canisius at Hamilton. Western New York, we play outstanding football, we have outstanding history, and looking forward to this season.
Yeah, Naaman Roosevelt, I hear, is having a good old time up in the CFL.
I've watched him play,
Yeah.
and Luke Tasker. They're doing very well.
He's,
Yeah, I know. I've watched some Canadian football.
Hey, I do too. You gotta get your fix in
Yeah,
in early July.
and of course today there's some college football on, so I'll be watching that
Oh,
tonight.
there's high school football on.
There's high school football on and the NFL on today. So, while my kids are out enjoying the lake, I think I'm gonna be inside watching football. I'm a loser, I know. All right, let's talk about some of the games this season that stand out. That hey, you might want to go catch this one.
well, I mentioned last week Cleveland Hill and Maryvale, and both of those teams are outstanding, and they're gonna be competing for league and sectional championships. Canisius and St. Joe's plays in week 5. That'll be a really competitive game, and that will be at St. Joe's. We take.
Oh, and by the way, there was a change in the Aquinas.
Aquinas that's moving from New Era Field to Stransky
Right.
Complex.
Okay.
They were gonna play on a Thursday or something, and
Yeah.
so they're gonna be playing back on Saturday. But those games stand out. When you look, and you mentioned, I think last week, you look at the schedule, you'd like to be at 4 or 5 games, because they're all gonna be competitive, they're all gonna be fun games.
Yeah, we're not all like you, Dick, there. We can just divide our body into 7 and go.
But no, the most games I ever saw on the weekend were 11.
Jeez.
Well, they played Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I didn't stay for 11 games. Like, I'd go to St. Joe's, and then go to Amherst, whatever. If I did that today, I'd be sleeping for a week.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Some other games, Francis.
It would be.
I like this Star Point Grand Island game. Now it's a non-league game this year, but the past few years it's been for a division title. I'll be interested to see and the intensity those two bring to that game. Williamsville North, Williamsville East. Frank's gonna be there. We also might have some special video at halftime, so for WNY Athletics. So keep an eye on that on our YouTube page. I think I might be going to Hutch Tech Will South. You know, 2 programs there. You know, see how they gel into the new season. A lot of new faces for Will South. Obviously, Hutch Tech, new
Mhm.
coach.
I have to catch Will South game this year. That's a must for me.
And you know, Wilson's going to be playing. They have this quarterback, Steven Frericks. He's a farmer. Like, he doesn't play Fortnite like most of these kids do. He
Good.
like carries bales of hay and throws it around. This
I
kid's
love
built.
going to a game at Wilson. Wilson is one of the neatest fields that you can go to, especially when they've got the chowder going on and oh my.
They also have an outstanding wide receiver in Marcel Wilson, and the Grand Island Star Point game will be good this year. Last year, Grand Island dominated Star Point, and Star Point was undefeated at that game. And I think Tom Cesare had about 200 yards rushing, three touchdowns, and that changed the whole dynamics for Star Point, because then they lost 3 games for the
Part of
season.
it had to do was they lost
Aaron.
like 6 starters in the last 2 games, so that really killed them.
Including Aaron.
Yeah, including Aaron.
Anthony, please forgive Dick for interrupting your talk about food to talk football. Please forgive
It's
him.
very rude, but I will. Well, guys, Dick Gallagher, especially you, I mean, thank you so much. Tom, you're gonna be sticking around for most of the season, talking
Absolutely.
football with us. Francis, thank you. Roger, thank you. Derek, and thank you. Sports-
DK, you're the man.
You the man. Sports Talk Saturday is next. We'll talk to you next week with highlights and conversation about the first week of football.